Good morning everyone, I am Dozie. In this video I'll be showing you how to build a sign-up form using only HTML and CSS. But before we do that, let's go ahead and demo our sign-up form and see what the end product will be like. So here we are. This is how our sign-up form will be like when we're done designing it. So we'll be adding this box shadow around it, and we'll be adding this hover effects on the sign-up button and this linear gradient background over here, and I'll be spacing all this input box. So let's get to work. The first thing we are going to do right here is to create a folder on our home screen. We'll be following the normal procedure. I'll create a folder on the home screen and I'll call this folder the sign-up folder. Then I'll run this folder with my code editor, VS Code. Just right click on it, show more options, then open with VS Code. Right here, first thing I'm going to do is to create the HTML file. So I'll click on this Explorer over here, then click on New File, then index.html, and I'll also create the CSS file at the same time, style.css. So when you're done with that, head over to the HTML file, hold down Shift and click on 1 to get an exclamation mark, then enter. I'll modify this title over here. I'll make it sign up. At next those. So let's link the CSS file to the HTML. Come in between this head tag over here, type out link and select it in between this href, the style.css file. When you're done with that, the first thing we are going to do is to create a container div. So dot container, then enter. So this container div will be containing all our HTML codes. The next thing we'll be doing is to create another div and call it the sign up div. So dot sign up, and in between this sign up div over here, I'll just be adding the text sign up. So sign up. After that, I'll come under this sign up. I'll come under this sign up div over here, and I'll create a form tag. I'll give it an action, add the pound sign, and open this form tag over here. We'll be writing codes inside this form tag. The next one we'll be doing is to create another div, and we'll name this div user info. So dot user info. Right here now, I'll create a div for the input box. I'll call this div input box. So input box, and in between this div, I'll make a span tag. This span tag, I'll give in between this span tag, I'll add the text name, and I'll give it a class of info. Under the span tag, I'll create an input line. So type out the input, give it a type of text, and give it a placeholder of enter name. Or enter names, and give this a class of space. Come over to this place. After the placeholder, type out this required attributes. The work of this required attribute is that before you head over to the next input box to type in the required information, this required attribute will ask you to fill in the initial input box. I will show you when I'm done. So what we're going to do right now, after creating this, we'll copy this div, this input box div, and paste it in 5 places. So just copy it and paste it in 5 places. And I'll start modifying this input box. I'll have to turn name, password, username and all that. So this second one over here, I'll make this username, and I'll make this enter username. The next one here, I'll make it the email. I think we made a little mistake over here. This username here is supposed to be for this. So let's turn this one to the username. Username. And right here, we'll do the same thing. Username. Then we'll make this the email. And also make this enter email. The next one will be the tel for the telephone. I'll also make this enter tel. The next one will be for the password. So I'll make this password. And make this enter password. And this will be the last one, will be the confirm password. And also this will be confirm password. So let's run this on live server and see what we've done so far. I'll right click and open it with live server. So here we are. I'll put this side by side so you can see what I'm doing in real time. I'll make this by the side. I'll make this by the side. So okay, like this. Head over to this password over here and turn this type to password, and to this confirm password do the same thing. Turn the type to password instead of text. After you've done that, we start with the next thing in line is to create the div that will carry all the gender options. So come in between this div and this form over here, I'll create a div and I'll call this div gender info. This div will be the div required to carry all the gender informations. So the next thing is to create another span. I'll call this span. I'll give it a class of gender option. And in between this span, I'll type out the text gender. After that, under this span, create another div right here. I'll call this div options. In between this div over here, I will open a label tag, and this label tag will leave this for blank, and in between this label tag we type out the input box and the checkbox, the code lines for input box and the checkbox. So we start with the input. Give this a class of box. After we've given this a class of box, I'll turn the type to checkbox. And to produce this clickable checkbox over here on the live server, and under this checkbox we'll open a span tag. I'll give this span tag a class of gender, and in between this span tag I'll add the text male. When you've done that, so copy this label code over here, this label tag code over here, and paste it in 3 places. That's what I'm doing right now. and we'll modify it. Make this one female instead of male, and make this one prefer not to see. Prefer not to see. When you've done that, coming between this form tag and this div over here, we'll create another div for the sign up button I showed you with the blue hover effect. So I'll call this div btn, and in between this div I'll create an input line and give this a class of, let me write this well. I'll give this a class of sign and turn this type over here to submit. So it denotes that this particular input box over here is for submitting a text, and add the value of sign up. When you've done with this line of code, you know you're done with HTML right now. The next thing we'll be doing is we'll head over to the CSS and start styling. So head over to the CSS. Let's start styling. The first thing is to lay out the layouts for the live server. So I will use the asterisk, open the curly brackets, set the margin to 0, padding to 0, font family, I'll be using the Arial font family here. Then box sizing to border box. When you've done that, head over to the HTML file. Let's copy this body. We'll start styling by copying this body. So this body is what contains everything here. It contains even the container div. So just call this body. Since it's not a div, we'll be using a dot to call it. Once you type out the body, open the curly brackets and give this a height of 100 VH. Display, set the display to flex. Then the next thing, set the padding to 12px. Justify contents. Make it center. Align items. Center to centralize the item. Then we'll be adding the background over here, the linear gradient background. So background, linear gradient. I'll be using a color code for this, a special color code. You can use any color code of your choice. I'll be using tomato and teal. Come over to this 145 over here and let's add dig, because we missed it initially, to get the background moving. When you've done that, head over to the HTML file, copy the container. We'll start the code officially with styling this container div over here that will contain all our input boxes and information. So head over to the CSS, use the dot to open it, paste the container, then curly brackets. I'll start with giving this container a width of 100%, a height of 80%, and this width of 100%, the height of 80% results to the horizontal and vertical size of the container and background. I'll give this a background color. I'll use a special color code for this, RGB 238, 233, and 233. No, not over there, right here, and 233. When you've done that, give this a padding of 30px and 30px. The next attribute to be given this is a max width. And the job of this max width is to denote the maximum width in which this container can stretch to. So we'll be giving this a max width of 750 px. After that, we'll give this a border radius to make the edge curved. I'll give it a border radius of 5 px. That is better. So head over to the HTML file. Let's copy this sign up class over here because we'll be styling this right now. So copy it and go over to the CSS and paste it. I'll start with giving this a font weight. By the way, this is what we're styling right now, this sign up text. I'll start with giving this a font weight of bolder to make it bolder. Then increase the size. I'll give it a font size of 30 px. Then text align. To shift this text from the left hand side to the center, I'll give it a text align of center. When you've done that, the next thing we'll be doing is to style this space over here. So copy this space, which is this input box, each of these input box, copy this space in the HTML file, head over to the CSS and paste it. So start with giving this space a background. I'll be using a special color code for this, so I'll be using RGB 255 and 255. And give this a margin bottom of 20 px. Space it out, and a margin top of 10 px. So space it out furthermore. Then I'll be giving this a border. To design the borders over here, you know this border is too thick. Let's reduce this border, make it 1 px, solid and black. And black. This is better. Next we'll be doing after this, head over to the HTML file. We'll be designing this user info right now. This one over here. And we'll be using this form tag to call it. So copy this user info. Come to the CSS. Tap out the form. Then dots. The user info, open the curly brackets. You start with setting display to flex wrap. I'll set this flex wrap to wrap. Then justify content to space between. When you've done with that, head over to the HTML file again. Copy this input box div over here. That all these div shares the same attributes. Come to the CSS and paste it. We'll start with giving this a width. So just follow what I'll do here. I'll give this a width of calc 100% /2 minus 25 px. To space this around like this. Then margin of 20 px, 0 and 20 px to further align it well. Then the next thing we'll be doing here, head over to the HTML file, copy this input over here, come to the CSS, let's style it. Dots. No, you don't need dots to copy this because it's not a div, so you can just paste this input So give this width of 100%. I'm styling this right now. I think this 100% is okay. So let's increase the height. I'll give this a height of 55 px. That's better. Then let's curve the edge with border radius of 10 px. Then padding left to move all these placeholder, enter password, enter email from the left hand side a little bit in between. Give this a padding left of 10 px, and this is better. Next thing we'll be styling after that, head over to the HTML, copy this info over here to style this name, username, info text. So copy this info, come to the CSS and paste it. So just give this a font weight. We'll be giving it only one attribute. I'll give it a font weight of bold to make it thicker. This is better. After that, I think you're done with this, the input box over here. So let's start taking care of these gender options. Go over to the HTML and copy this gender option. Scroll down, copy this gender option div. Come over to the CSS. This gender option div contains this gender text over here. So we'll be styling this gender text. Paste it. So start with giving this a font weight of bold to make it bolder. Then let's increase the size. I'll give this a font size of 25 px. Better. Head over to the HTML file once more. Copy this gender over here. So we can style this male female text. Head over to the CSS and paste it using the dots. The first will be doing is give this a position of absolute to normalize the positioning. Then font weight, we're gonna make it bold also. Bold. This is better. Then margin top. I'll give it a margin top of 20 px. I think it's better like that. So head over to the HTML file again. Let's copy the box which contains all these checkbox. This box div over here which contains the checkbox. So let's style the checkbox. Now you've copied the box, come over to the CSS and paste it. So start with giving this box a height. Let's reduce the height to 12 px. This is better. Then give the box. The next attribute I'll be giving this is a margin top of 20 px. So further space this around. And before we go further, head over to the HTML file. Let's copy this options div over here. We'll style it to better align this male female text and these checkboxes. So copy it and head over to the CSS. In between this gender option, we'll paste it here. I'll give this a display of flex. Then height of 70%. Then justify contents to further space it around. Space around. I think this is better. And give this a margin of 15 px. And to move this one inside, to move this prefer not to say inside, so we'll give this a margin left of minus 120 px. And this is better, yes. What we're going to do right now is to style this sign up button over here. So to do that, head over to the HTML file, copy this sign div, come over to the CSS and paste it. I'll be giving this sign up button the same background color as this background over here. So background linear gradients 145 degrees, tomato and tail. And this is better. So let's make this sign up bolder. So make the font weight bolder, then make the margin top 20 px, then set the color of the sign up text to white. And this is better. To add the hover effects that I showed you when we were demoing this end product, just come under this place, type out the sign div, double column, hover, and a curly bracket, just add the background. I'll be adding a sky blue background, so RGB 67 110 and 201. So let's check if it's effective. As you can see, it is effective. And if you want to add a time transition to this, so when we hover on this, it will take a few seconds before the color comes into play. So just add transition. So I won't be using that transition. I just want to show you how to do that. You can add, let's say, 1 second. So when we hover on this, it take a little time for the color to come into play, but I will be using that like I said. I think we're done with this, but we're missing something. But before we go further, let me show you what I mean by this required. This required we added over here. This is the work. When you type in something and you want to click on sign up, it requires you to fill in the next input box. So let's add this border shadow I showed you, the box shadow. Head over to this CSS file. In between this container, type out box shadow. So we'll be adding the first box shadow 10 px, and the work of this first 10 px, it takes care of the vertical aspect of this. So 10 px, the next 10 px will take care of the horizontal aspect of this, and the next 10 px determines how blurry this box shadow becomes. So we'll be adding box shadow 10 px, and you can see it is blurry, and we can add the color black. So let's do reverse engineering. If you remove this 10 px, and you can see, or rather let's remove only the 0 there. So if you remove this 0 and make it 1 px, so it limits the vertical, or rather the horizontal aspect of this. That the work of the second 10 px. The first 10 px, if you remove this, so it limits the work of the box shadow of the vertical aspects of this. So let's add it back. And this is our code for the CSS file, and this is our code for the HTML file. As you can see, we've come to the end of this video. If you like this, consider giving it a share, a like, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, so when next we release our next video, you'll be around to watch it. Thanks for your time.